Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Meka.
And I'm Nataraja.
And we are Ascended Heart Navigators. Welcome to a beautiful edition of, talking about spiritual things and trying to make them really understandable and relatable and hopefully a toolbox for you to navigate this crazy world with. Tonight we're talking about the transmutation of embodied trauma. What does that mean, Nataraja?
So it means a couple of things. It's a lot of what the work that we've done, Meka, and this is our personal experience, and we'll talk about personal experience of embodied trauma. And basically, we touched on it the last time we talked about.
Right.
So look it up on YouTube. Also, YouTube, Ascended Heart Navigators.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about emotions and then trapped trauma, and that is what embodied trauma is when trauma is actually stuck as a physical element in your body. Right.
Very fascinating because a lot of us do feel physical pain. In our shoulders, in our stomachs, in our hearts, and it can even manifest as disease the more we stick with these trauma patterns and they stay trapped. Right. So one of the most beautiful gifts you can give to yourself in life is to have a healing experience where you release some of that trapped trauma energy in your bodies and release yourself from the trauma patterns of your family or ancestry. So
Meka, why are we talking about that today?
We're talking about that today because Nataraj and I have a history of doing this kind of work.
We have a history, yo.
Yeah, we do. And about 8 years ago, we did a rewilding together, and that was one of the first projects we did together that really sparked our bond. And it incorporated her elements of the red tent movement, which you can look up more, which is really fascinating. And we did touch base about that a little bit in the last broadcast. And I incorporated elements of Japanese Buto dance that I had been studying with Ima Tenko in Kyoto, Japan. And for me, studying that form of dance was not just an artistic and cultural experience to understand some deeper elements of Japan, but it was also really fascinating to understand the whole mission statement and spiritual implications of the way that the dance was created and why. So it was a dance, it's called a dance of darkness or dance of shadows, which is already in and of itself, you're dancing like the shadow or the feeling behind an object or an emotion or a point of conflict in the world. So as post-World War II, this very postmodern dance form was created. And it was created to release trapped trauma in the earth at places that had suffered, especially places that had suffered war, battles, or other trauma. So it was for global trauma healing, which we're creating another event and that we're going to film and share with everyone on Ascended Heart Navigators on the website, ascendedheartnavigators.com or
and on YouTube
or Instagram and Facebook for the reminders. Yes, very good. So do you have your light on? We got those fancy lights. Look at us.
No, I don't have it on. It's okay.
We're learning this as we go, but the most important thing is the content of just letting you guys know some interesting new topics. I don't think most people really think about or take into account where their trauma is trapped in their body. And my favorite art form that made me understand that was Japanese Buto dance. And we even did things called isolations where you'd dance the spirit of your elbow. So I call that elbow exorcisms when you're getting that tension out. But a lot of us experience this through massage therapy on a physical level and on an energy body level through Reiki or something similar. Right. Yeah. What are your experiences with this, Nataraja?
For it was some grief work that I had talked about the last time.
Grief work.
Yeah, doing grief work with a group in Oregon. So I did some. We worked as a group, and then we did public grieving. But I think that
powerful.
It was a powerful experience, and my first first understanding or even like awakening, I was young, I was 19 and I was living in the Middle East, and my routine was to go out on the beach, and every day I would go out on the beach and watch the sunset.
Wow.
And on one particular instance, there was all these people like descended at the beach, and these women all dressed in black. These women ran into the ocean and screaming and yelling and flailing their arms. And at first I couldn't understand what was going on, but then I started watching and observing. I was like, this is really interesting. And so the men who are usually the ones that are in the front, and they're the ones that have the physical like appearance in public, and the women are usually the ones that are kept in the shadows, and they're kept inside.
Right.
But in this particular instance, it was the women who were like being present and expressive physically, and it was the men who were standing back on the beach holding space for the women to be flailing and screaming and yelling. And I understood that this was a mourning ritual of the Arabic people, and I was really fascinated by this. And I was like, we don't do this. Like, what is this? We don't
What
do
is
this.
our grief processing? Do we have one in America?
I think our grief process is connected to shame. Because you're not supposed to be sad.
Right.
You're not supposed to cry.
Yeah, it's just a sign of weakness to cry or emote.
Right. I mean,
especially for men, which must be really difficult. Hey CJ, hey Jeremy. Speaking of some like amazing humans like coming on, giving some love, thank you. So I think one of the best examples of a public grieving is actually kind of almost the opposite of grieving, though. In New Orleans, they do a celebration of life ceremony. So still, are we lacking the release of that trauma from our bodies?
Right, and we're definitely lacking. Right, and we're definitely lacking a space for grieving, because this is again, it's a thing of appointed shame and weakness, and we don't have in our culture that there's a container of grieving. And I think that's how and why you and I connected so much, Meka. When I first met her and she began talking to me about Buto dance, and I was just blown away, and something triggered really deeply in me, and I was like, that's it. I mean, this is part of like some massive and important healing work that we're supposed to do. So we collaborated on our first rewilding, and that experience was more to be specifically connecting to the wild within, which was a beautiful experience in and of itself, and learning how to emote in a physical and audible way what was inside,
like extreme expression. That's kind of what one of the aspects that we're trying to cultivate here in our conversations is a safe and gentle, loving space for like an extreme expression therapy. So that's one of the things that we're dialing in for that, because I know in metal music, I see that as an extreme expression therapy. People are allowed to mosh, scream, yell, come with any emotion that they have, and actually transmute that. On the audience, on the stage, wherever we are together, we definitely feel that tribal community. So I really love that about rock concerts. So now, how do we put that in a more normal state? Not everyone gets to go to a rock concert or even knows that is a place to transmute energy, and not everybody goes there to transmute energy.
Right.
Some people know it's
more of an emotional release.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something to it, and I think that there's the connecting point is what we connected on was ceremony.
Ceremony
is when we do anything in a ceremonial and intentional way.
Wow.
That is where the healing, a lot of the magic and the healing takes place.
Agreed.
And when we have created ceremony, and we are creating ceremony around a release,
yay!
On the day after Thanksgiving, we're going to have another trauma release ceremony, and it's going to be huge, and it's going to be immense. And this is something that we touched on our last conversation. Is often we think about when we experience trauma, it's just our own our own personal stuff,
right?
And we don't really know that it's actually trauma that is connected. And we're like, okay, maybe it's connected to my mom or my dad,
Right.
But
this is what a lens right now to do shadow work. And shadow work doesn't mean you're just looking at the darkness in you. It's the things you're hiding and you haven't been able to shine your light on. And it's why things are coming to surface. So you're bringing things that you've ignored your whole life into the light so that you can heal it, transform it, or use it and love it and appreciate those aspects of yourself. So I think that right now is such an incredible time in our human history to not only acknowledge our own personal traumas that we need to release from our bodies and our minds, but really what traumas were passed down through our family lines and ancestry, even before our parents or our grandparents, like things that we don't even realize. Alcoholism is often something that's passed down. That's why they say that it's often inherited or generational. Or what are we experiencing as a community, whether small communities, family communities, or larger communities, the country, the states, what little pockets, or what are we experiencing on a global level? It's more evident than ever that we're going through something on a global scale that could be healed through each one of us, because we each have a responsibility and beautiful connection to each other, that when we heal something, when we have the courage to heal something in ourselves, that it then can go and transform into the world. So it has rippling beautiful effects in cosmic consciousness and the world. Trace Banks.
Hey, Ashley.
Hey, CJ. Okay. Trace, you are such an inspiration. I am so proud of you. I love you so much. Thank you for being here. So glad that the work you're doing in your life is just awe-inspiring, and I can't wait to hear what music you come up with next, because you are such an inspiration to me and so many, and I love you. CJ, of course, is bringing up things about past lives, because also what we talk about a lot in shamanism or theta healing, which we brought up before, is that some of the record keeping in our DNA that does create, trauma patterns that do manifest physically, do come from past lives or even societal patterns that get passed on to us. So there is some work we can do to unlock those ailments, pains, suffering, diseases that are trapped inside our body. And that's definitely something that we can do. We know a lot of healers that can do in different ways, and that we're creating ceremony around right now. And that's what we're doing on Black Friday, is the blackening ritual, to have intense, extreme expression therapy, release of trauma, and making the world a better place, because that's what we're all about.
Thank you, John Stewart. You also are bringing so much healing to the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
Friends!
Yes.
I love you guys. This is great!
This is awesome.
Records.
And I want to take this to a hypothetical moment in which you were talking about community.
Yes.
And say, for example, you're with your family, you go out to a park or something, and something happens to something happens to you, right? And something like traumatic happens, or something triggers you or whatever, and you go home and you take it out on your family or whatever, and somehow there's and then you scream at your kids, or maybe you're triggered by your kids are triggered by your children, and maybe you hit them or whatever happens, or you throw something because something happened, and then all of a sudden the thing that happened in the community then is part of you, and then it became part of your child's experience. And then they have this thing that they did this. They don't know why mom or dad was angry, but it had made this happen. And
then they feel guilty for the rest of their lives, and they're trying to process.
And then it goes on and on and on. And then if you think about the rippling effects of how we can so easily be impacted by or impact a trauma experience within the collective.
Yeah.
And this is what we're wanting to talk about here, is that often what we're experiencing from an event or an experience is a collective. It's a trauma that someone did something to us, but it was connected to a trauma that they experienced, and then it mushrooms and it mushrooms and it mushrooms. And when you were talking about bringing things into light and like the shadow and the darkness, this is what we're experiencing right now globally, with everything that's happening on this world. It's almost as like this light is shining, and it's looking at and it's asking all of us to look at all the pain, look at all the trauma that has happened on this planet, not only with humans, but with the species of animals and with the planet in and of itself. And it's a manifestation of trauma that has happened, and we're all feeling the effects of an impacted trauma that we have collectively as humans, as being on this planet, have not transmuted and worked through the trauma that we have.
Staying stuck.
Yeah, we have been stuck, and we're not realizing,
because we take it on and we don't know where it comes from.
Right.
And therefore we're suffering patterns of depression. Yes, I know, Jeremy, like it's like a daily struggle, and that's why we're shining light on it, because you're not alone. And everybody thinks it's their fault, or they're looking for who to blame.
Right.
Because they think there's something wrong with the way they feel because they've done something wrong, or there's something wrong with them. And that's really not it at all. It's just there's a lot of energy we've taken on, and a lot of trauma that hasn't transmuted or been worked through for generations. Right. Or however, I mean, we can't even get a scope of that.
Right. And it's been a millennial of war.
So many war. PTSD is like the number one reason that, like, you know, that there's like this pain and suffering that gets locked in, because we're almost trained to be in this war state. And then our incredible, beautiful humans who go out and, like, you know, serve their countries, are then taking on that trauma. And like their courage is overwhelming. And I know it's, you know, often necessary, but like how many wars have been fought that have been stuck in our DNA, so that we have ingrained in us fear or hatred that we don't even know where it comes from.
Yeah, and a lot of hatred in seeing the other, and we're even like right now, what we're seeing playing out is many generations of seeing the other as being our source of conflict, the other as being the one who has created. It's the other, and this is something that is coming up. Is when we're recognizing that we have throughout time have done horrible things to each other because we have seen the other and other
as
people
separate from us.
Right.
When, you know, or we do that internally, because then we carry the guilt and shame. Right. Even seeing ourselves as something that's the other from the society. Right. Which I think is another interesting twist that our mind does to make us feel isolated, shameful, or
Can you give an example of that, Meka? No, like what's coming to mind, because I'm really curious about like what's...
Well, I notice most of what I see and witness in my friend group and in my clients, the people that I do readings for or healing sessions on, is a lot of personal hatred for themselves.
Okay.
So they've transmuted what had been previously the other, like that group is somebody different, even like countries that are next to each other that are very similar culturally. They're like the other, they're evil, they're bad people. And I think a lot of that has turned inward. And I think a lot of people are feeling that they are the other, that they don't fit into a group, that they don't belong. There's something wrong with them. And I think it comes probably from media or groups, or, you know, telling you that you're supposed to be a certain way. Right. That's one of the reasons. Like I know I have crazy red dreads and I express myself in a weird way, but I think that is my tool or technique to combat the fact that I don't need to fit into a box to belong, to find self-love and self-acceptance. And I notice the more that I sit with myself and have gratitude for my little version of human experience, the more I can hold space for others, no matter how different they are than me. Then I become excited by their similarities and differences, and I can celebrate them when I'm okay with the inside first. I think it's gone more inward more now than ever. I think in the past there's been still community groups where they feel like they belong to each other, and then whoever's outside of that has been the other. But I think that modern day we have turned it in to be ourselves the enemy. Like we think that we don't belong, we think that we're not loved, we think there's something wrong with us, and therefore there's a lot more ailments that are self-inflicted on the own inner voice being negative and hate talking to ourselves. And that's something that I think that if we focused on and brought some light to and brought some technique to, that we can really change the world. And one of the ways I think we can do that is through breath work. And that's why do I think I love singing? Dale, I mean, you're an artist too, is I think it's because I'm breathing it out. I don't think I'm the same person if I don't sing or express myself. I have to get that extreme oxygen intake and release. You know, luckily I express myself vocally in a way that moves energy, hopefully for not just myself but for others. That's one of my goals as an artist, is to help other people transmute trapped energy and emotions. But I think that if we took inventory of our breath, we could understand, with learning this week, and I don't even have this technique mastered, but it's definitely given me insight. If we can see what panic mode our breath goes into, even under like going to the grocery store, or feeling that someone is judging us, or whatever situation, being in conflict on even social media in your own house where there is no threat around you, feeling your breath change into panic, or even holding your breath, is one of the ways I think that these fears, guilt, shame, trauma get stuck in our bodies, is because we lock up. So, like as if we were
breath work for
in cold water or something scary, right? Breath, so important. So, one of the techniques I would bring to light for all of us as we're checking in with ourselves is not only looking at our thoughts, but looking at our breath. Are we breathing? Are we breathing in a deep, controlled, thoughtful way? Are we bringing an attention to our breath? Like that is meditation, is just focusing on what your breath is doing.
And then there's some other modalities that we want to like just quickly touch base with you on. One is cranial sacral therapy. If you've not heard of this, cranial sacral therapy is an amazing tool and technique, a modality that some massage therapists, some therapists will have this training in, and basically it's a release of the cerebral fluid. So what happens is in a moment of trauma, our brain is sending this fluid to our bodies, and what cranial sacral does is there are certain places that can be touched to be able to release this fluid. And it actually like opens up the pathways, the chemical pathways from the brain to the body. And this is and what often happens in cranial sacral therapy is you return to that point of trauma, because where the trauma is trapped in the body, that is where that's where the memory of the trauma is. And I want to quickly talk about my daughters. I noticed some serious like birthing trauma with my daughter, and I took her. I think she was 2 months old when I took her. She was like screaming all the time, twisting in this really weird way. And I was like, something is not right. Something happened. Something's happening with her. And so I took her to a cranial sacral therapist specifically on for infants. And anyone who is out there who knows someone who has a child that is exhibiting like strange behaviors, like something's not quite right and I don't understand what it is, please look into craniosacral therapy. It's an amazing tool, even for myself. I so I was an adult when I finally did a session, and I had so much anger, and I had no idea that I knew that if I didn't do something with this anger, I was not going to be able to control it.
Wow.
And I had gone to a therapy session, and there was so much trauma release connected to someone from my past that I was able to completely be released of this trauma. And so craniosacral therapy is an amazing, especially for infants and young children. See a specialist of someone who's trained specifically with children and infants, and I cannot say enough about this form of trauma release.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, any type of massage therapy, if someone is an energy worker too,
right,
they can work on your physical body while working in your energy body. I know that Sugita Jackson from Tea and Tarot events, Tea and Tarot Emporium, does incredible physical massage work with energetic body work. And I know a lot of people do Reiki or other energy body healing work. I've been noticing some.
Reiki also another great, like if you know someone who does Reiki. Yeah. That's
yeah, I mean, I've definitely studied Reiki, and I love that it was mirrored. The same type of lessons were mirrored in my shamanic studies. So it's like cultures have done it all over the world, this energy body work. And it's really funny that if you get stuck in a certain chakra, different energy center in your body, it can lessen the energy to upper chakras, lower chakras.
True. Yeah.
I know some people who like have no grounding, for example. They're not connected to their root chakra, which is associated at like the base of your spine, the color red, things that are grounding, survival feelings, and people who are just not grounded at all, just completely just almost feel like they're floating over their body. And then when we do like a healing on them shamanically or Reiki wise, opening that up and getting the energy flow to their root chakra, man, even like they walk different. You can see them in their body, the grounding, they're present in the moment. And that can change your whole life, is being aware what blockages you may be able to correct in your energy body through Reiki.
I want to connect what you said about the chakras and the breath work. So if anyone's listening right now, this is an amazing, tool, and you can do it. It depends on how much time you want to spend with it, for sure. But if you're with the breath and then you're working, and then look it up if you're not sure what the chakras are. They're energy points within the body, and if you start with the root, and if you're going to the root chakra, and it's just breathing in. If you're breathing in that chakra and you're just breathing it in slowly, and you're visualizing that chakra, and you visualize a light or a spinning, and you visualize a spinning light on that chakra, and then you breathe. And then you go up to your neck chakra and you breathe and you visualize this spinning light, and keep going all the way up. And what it does, it really releases these meridians to be able to open completely where things that are blocked. Wow. And it doesn't really take a lot of time to be in breath with each chakra, and then visualize this opening and spinning as you're going up.
That's awesome. What a great meditation. Meditation's not that hard. I mean, I know we're all very intimidated by that word, but that is a meditation. That visualization and focusing on your breath, moving through your energy centers. So, and we'll do some guided meditations on Ascended Heart Navigators pages for you to follow along with. But there's so many on YouTube, and Michelle Orwick does a bunch of beautiful guided meditations on magicalmichelle.com. And there's so many others.
Right.
I will say, Dale, I love that you said that the sound of your hammer is therapy or helps you. I've been studying, of course, sound therapy a lot recently, and in shamanism, I know that's something I bring up a lot, the drumming is what changes your brainwave into theta, where you can receive healing and transmute thought processes, belief systems, and energy. And I can imagine that the hammer, not only is it releasing, because you've got this big hammer, you're doing this leather work, and I can imagine that also there's a drumming effect, droning, like releasing, moving, but also affecting your brain waves, which I find fascinating. As I am creating this album. I had a cool epiphany last night that I didn't even tell Nataraja.
Always secrets.
So I am trying to look at which notes on the scale relate to different energy centers, and like F sharp relates to the heart chakra, and how we can move through the chakras and release and expand there through rhythms and through scales and notes and harmonics, and of course poetry and sound and vibration and intention and meditation. There's lots of different angles to this, but just the art of sound, any sound, storytelling is sound, singing is sound, drumming is sound, is one of the best just movements of energy that is very detectable to our human body. So all of that totally is legit and works. So I also want to make sure that we're answering any questions. Oh, I love our beautiful friends. Yeah. So
do you have any questions? Yeah, if you have questions, shoot it out to us. That would be really awesome. So yeah, the reason why the reason why we're talking about this is what we're going to be doing on Friday. We're going to be doing a global trauma release, and this is recognizing the fact that we are all in this global pain and global healing at the moment, and we are all working together. When we do this, any kind of work that you're doing to be able to transmute your own grief and to work through your own grief is this deep understanding that it's not only your grief, it is you're transmuting the grief of your family, you're transmuting the grief of your ancestors, and it's also healing any wounds that we're going to be carrying forward to our children. And this is an understanding that this is actually what we're experiencing is global trauma, and when we are healing global trauma. And this understanding that this is how connected we are in human consciousness.
So connected. They've done a lot of research where we see that mushrooms communicate all over the world, like in their own natural internet underneath the earth.
Oh.
Like we are, like, you know, physicists have proven that there is a field that connects all of us, that we actually affect and affects us. So we are connected. That's not just, spiritual talk. Like that is actually scientifically proven and observable. So, any work you do for you helps make the world better, and it makes your life better, which is worthy. And anything that, the globe heals does have an effect on you. So have gratitude for anybody who is doing meditation work, because they're already creating more opportunity for, healing to you as well. Even you witnessing them might inspire you, but they're also doing the work, they say, for a global scale. A lot of Buddhists would always say that they're in the only person who can heal themselves in that way, but that is their service to cosmic consciousness, to create the opportunity for all sentient beings to transcend and be released from samsara. Samsara is the word for reincarnation over and over and over again. So I will, and I also say that there is a common phrase in shamanism that says that when you heal something in yourself, you heal 7 generations forward, and you heal 7 generations backwards, which is really fascinating.
And it's something I'm going to mention Peg in a minute. Something that we recently is Ho'oponopono, and realizing when we are healing the thing that we see in others in ourselves, we're healing that person as well. And we'll talk about Ho'oponopono later on. But also, Peg just mentioned something, and I want to say that we are going to have a talk about when bad things happen to people.
Yes.
And this is a really important conversation to have, and it's a hard conversation to have, is when things, and I think all of us have experienced some pretty traumatic events.
Totally.
And a lot of conversation I've had was like, but that doesn't make any sense. Like why
do bad things happen?
And we're going to delve into some deep waters when we talk about that.
Deep waters.
But it is an intense conversation to have, and we are going to have that conversation.
We're going to face it together. Yeah. I mean, it is, and I'm not afraid of the dark or the shadow work, but I'm also a perpetual optimist. So I realize that it's hard to go there, and may we all go there together and look at that shadow work and just create this sacred opportunity for looking at that shit together.
Right.
And making things okay, yes, but at the same time, facing them so that we can, see where these things come from, these belief systems, these limitations, these limiting beliefs. On the other side of limiting beliefs is where miracles happen.
Right.
And if you can identify why or where those limiting beliefs come from, then you're then in the driver's seat. You have the control and ability to choose different belief systems that are no longer stuck in ancestral trauma patterns or societal trauma patterns, and you set yourself free. And that's where, you can literally, you're creating your life. So if you're not limited by your belief systems, you absolutely can create miracles. And we witness it all the time. Watch any of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. He talks about that all the time, how miracles can happen in healing your body. Like people who, he crushed his spine, studied neuroscience, and then discovered the way to have his body heal itself by becoming aware of that and not disbelieving that it was possible. For some reason, there's a disbelief that it's possible to heal ourselves. And most of the work to heal ourselves doesn't come from the hospital. It comes from getting over our limiting beliefs and thinking, life is whatever our chatter is. It's not true. Looking at it where it comes from, dismantling it, and then rewriting a stronger belief system that actually serves us and our greatest good and our abilities to heal and our ability to make anything wonderful happen and overcome all sorts of ailments and release all sorts of trauma patterents. So,
real quickly, I think I want to add two things more, Meka. I talked about this briefly last time, and we're talking about embodied trauma, and I briefly talked about my experience last time. So I had debilitating back pain since I was a teenager, and I had gone to multiple chiropractors and therapists, and definitely no one could move my lower back. No one could. I went to so many different chiropractors, and I could not be adjusted in my lower back, and I had such debilitating pain, and sometimes it was often to a point where I just couldn't even walk. And when 7 years ago, I had this. I was doing some grief work with a group of women, and I had a session with one of the Candace, Tialita Faye, and she had a private session with me, and I moved some grief, and it was all connected to my, and we can talk about this later on in more depth, but it was connected to my mother, and it was connected to some pain and some things that happened to me as a child. But what it was a belief system that my mother was in abusive relationships, and my soul, I had a contract to be in abusive relationships and situations to be able to keep her company. Wow. And when I realized that this is what I have been doing my entire life, is being in a bond, in a soul bond with my mom, in a trauma pattern. And I was able to, and I was on the ground, I was screaming and yelling and flailing my arms and my back, and all of a sudden there was a pop in my lower back, and that pain, that debilitating lower back pain, was completely and totally released. And I personally believe strongly in trauma release, and how it can have profound effects on our body. And another thing that I want to talk about is trauma, but also as we're going into the holidays and we're celebrating Thanksgiving, and we're disconnected with what actually happened and the period in time in which we're celebrating, and the atrocities that were done to our, the Native American indigenous communities at that time.
And the atrocities, I mean, just to be fair too, the atrocities that the people who came over here were avoiding, but then they're carrying on. Like it's it's not one group's fault. I always say that. It's a pattern of this earth to, you know, be in these trauma patterns.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so they were escaping atrocities or and difficult situations, came over here
and repeated
it kind of repeated the same process. And I mean, there's so many examples of this where it's not one group's fault. There's not one bad guy. Believe me, there's no bad guy. Mm-hmm. It's just everybody's doing this. So if we did honor the fact that a lot of these our world is built on this pattern of traumas, it's interesting to see if we release that, how we could stop that from becoming something that happens over and over and over again throughout the globe in all different cultures and this you know, cultural, you know, taking over assimilations, or, you know, there's so many examples. I mean, every single culture has an example, you know, where they are both sides of that coin. Mm-hmm. So what is the opportunity on this Black Friday? I think one opportunity is kind of acknowledging the fact that we are kind of stuck in this corporate structure, where we, you know, what do we feel our worth attached to things? And you know, I'm all for, you know, to support small businesses. I'm all for gifting. I think, you know, I love the art of gift giving and gift culture. But how do we attach our worth to objects and material things?
Right. And also keeping in the framework of consumer culture, how many people are affected, you know, globally by consumption. You know, and
it becomes almost like a perpetual self-trauma.
Right. And it's the people who are making things, you know, cheap labor, and it's the dumping, and then it's the waste.
Oh yeah.
And if we're really looking at like
what do we need?
The impact of consumerism and on the planetary trauma, when the earth is saying, good God, can you stop? you know,
so many things. I mean, my family works in the book business, and it's like how many books have been thrown away unnecessarily over these years. Luckily, they perform a service where they help recycle books to get to the education system without, you know, this enormous amount of waste. But like looking at these tiny examples that we can do, but then really most of the waste. I mean, I love that we're trying to recycle and things, but it's really these large corporations that would, if they did things in a slightly more environmentally aware way that wouldn't really affect, in course in our eyes, you know, the profit margins too much, then it could change the world. It can change how much plastic is in the oceans. It could change how much toxins are released. So just really getting a reflection back on what do we need? Like, definitely we need local artists. Definitely we need, to support
local producers. Yeah, for sure. Local producers and people who are being treated fairly and paid fairly. Absolutely, for sure. And I think it's more. I think it's like an energetic thing, also. You know, and if you think about consumerism, and this goes back to our conversation last time, is like, what are the emotions? It's not about the shopping, but what are the emotions to be like noting as we do shop? Is it connected to shame or guilt? Is it connected to like a lack of worth? You know, is it connected to being escaped? Is it connected to like sadness or isolation? You know, and it's like, what are really are we feeling?
Yeah,
and when we are
good insight,
buying
Nataraja.
things, and we are buying things, and one of the things that I really love about the program that we are doing, the 60-day the Giving Game transformation
from Heather Noel's website.
Heather Noel, the Giving Game. And one of the things that she says is, and one of the days is, if you're doing something, say, I'm doing the best for my body right now. And if you take that moment, even consuming, of like, I'm doing the best for the earth right now, and then watch what your body feels. I'm like, ooh.
Your body will tell you.
Your body is going to communicate something very different. And I'm doing my best for my family right now. And your body's like, wait a minute, is that real truth?
Have you ever seen a pendulum work? You can use your body as a pendulum, and it'll tell you whether a food is good for you or whether you feel good about a certain thing you're doing. So that's another thing your body can do.
Right.
Is it can be the embodiment of your truth detector.
Right.
and seeing where your belief systems lie and your relationship to your choices. I think that's huge.
Right.
Being able to make choices where it's in your higher self and your greatest good. I want to talk to a couple more friends that are saying stuff.
Yeah.
E-turn, regifting for the win. Yes. And making things and getting from local artists. I know Crystal is a local artist that I love. I actually bought a Mother's Day gift for her that she created a special card that matched the painting, the print, and I got that delivered to my mother. So like, local artists, music, I don't know, we forget that you can buy and gift music. E-turn is a good example of a local artist. And Dale, I do believe that we're in the shift. I know all of my music is about that. We have an album called The Shift, Anthems for a Revolution. We are in the Aquarian age, where it's shifting. We're going from like 3D reality, this like very flat way of viewing things, to this much heightened way called 5D reality. And that's what we're trying to grasp and get our heads around and start living in a higher frequency. And that's happening now. And yes, Jen Ward is also a really incredible energy worker. I'd love to actually talk to her if we can make that happen, because she's helped give me perspective over the years. And Jeremy, I know that you use probably drums for sound therapy healing. I think a lot of artists I go to become musicians because they know that it is medicine, and it is a release medicine. It's not just for themselves, but actually creating these healing opportunities for others, even if it's a subconscious thing. We know, I know, do you know? We totally know. Any other cool comments? Yeah, great friends. All the good stuff. Yes.
So yeah, we're going to be doing that, the blackening. We're going to be doing a ceremony on Black Friday.
Dun, 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 dun.
And we're going to be sharing a blog that Meka's putting together about Buto dance, and what Buto dance is, and what the dance meant in that time, and how it's still being used now, and how it's being incorporated in our ceremony coming up. So
and all of those things.
All of those things.
Yeah, check out. We're definitely going to put up some more blogs, in the next few days around Japanese Buto dance and grief work, how it relates to the ceremony that we're creating for Black Friday called the Blackening, which is a global trauma release ceremony. And if anybody wants to ask us more questions, you can always message us. I love the internet because it makes us totally available to connect in new ways. I'm creating friends all over the world, and staying connected. Like, I lived in Japan for 3.5 years, and I'm still on a regular basis in connection with my friends there. It's like, it's not that far away when we have this beautiful internet. So there's so many blessings and things to be grateful for every day. Right, Joanna? Yes. Awakening. Yes. Self-care. So be good to you. Be good to yourselves. That's really important. That's how you are good to the world. If you want to know how to be of service to the world, start with being good to yourself and saying nice things to you.
And gifting self-care. Especially, let's gift some self-care to others. And having like a little massage party. Woo! Small, like, little group of people that you love. You're just massaging on them and washing their feet and rubbing them down with
consent.
With consent. No massage, like, you get together and you're just loving on each other, and like washing the feet with like oils, and whatever it takes, like gift any kind of self-care to each other, especially now when everyone is in isolation,
right?
And having that moment of being able to nurture yourself when you're not able to connect with others as we once were.
And be loving to those that you are in isolation with. If you do get to see your family
all the time,
then like, what ways can you create little varieties in your routine for that self-care opportunity, like have little spa days with your kids or your
me and my daughter have spa days a lot. We're doing each other's nails, like little mani-pedis and like face mask, and it's good. It's
dance
good
parties. I get dance parties with the kids. I do. I'm like, are we gonna dance? Because dance party feels like about now.
We love you guys, and we will be talking more and more and more about all of these beautiful things.
Excellent. Continue. Thank you for all the likes, follows, and shares, and subscribes, and all the things on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, and even checking out our website. There'll be more blogs up. Thank you for the support. We're just getting going on this and learning, so keep doing that.
Yes.
Ascended Heart Navigators. I'm Meka.
I'm Nataraja.
And we thank you, fellow travelers, for your time. I love you all.
Love you.
Good night. Boop-a-doop-ba.